welcome back to the Liberating Effect. I'm your host, Michelle Overstreet, and I'm joined today by Rabbi Mendy Greenberg and Isaac Smoldon. Today we're discussing Chapter 3, and Chapter 3 is Everyone Has a Purpose. I'm paraphrasing. That isn't exactly what it says.
Recognize your unique role.
Yes.
And we kind of set, again, very, very well organized book, right? We're seeing others. We know we're not alone. So there must be some reason why we should be, practicing this idea of giving back to others. And we know that we're capable of doing it because we have the support that we need. So what is it that we're going to be doing? And that is, I think, a little bit about what this chapter is about. And once again, themes in the book, it's not always the thing that you think it would be. And maybe your role has some more to do with the smaller things than some glorious purpose, right? I would say that we do. It talks about we do have a glorious purpose, but maybe there's glory in these small things. So, another good chapter. Another good chapter for the work that we do. And I think how I've been feeling lately with just juggling all these different balls in the air and, okay, we're going to get this little piece done and get this little piece done. And, oh my gosh, we haven't even done X, Y, or Z major project. But then, I don't know. I've been talking with Richard. Sorry, I've just totally taken over. I keep thinking that I'm going to segue out, but I'm just on a roll. I'm going to keep going because I've been talking with Richard, who comes in and talks with the staff. He's a licensed psychologist.
Richard Lizer from Lizer and Lizer
meets
Limited.
with our staff, and he was talking with me a couple weeks ago about this idea of sowing and reaping again, right? Recognizing when there's a lot more sowing than there is reaping. But you have to recognize when you're in those moments of reaping and when you're seeing the effects of your work. And I think that this chapter ties in a lot with that. I think that's a key message and something that I've really been focused on the last couple of weeks after reading that and having these conversations over the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm done.
Yes, well, I really liked the beginning, how you did a beautiful recap of this whole chapter very nicely. And actually the last two chapters in this chapter, very, very cool. Yeah, so the first letter I think is also start right in the beginning. The first page is the bomb, where he says there's two ways to. The Rebbe says about two ways to have perspective approaches to life. The first one is, being looking for pleasure, and doing whatever you could to get out of anything that will cause you displeasure and anything that will cause you harm or discomfort. And the second outlook is the approach is that your life has a purpose and a meaning. And for that purpose and meaning, sometimes it might mean that you have to sacrifice pleasure here and there. And it might mean that you have to work harder. But yet, ultimately, that by standing strong and dealing with that challenge, dealing with life challenges and realizing your purpose, that will bring the ultimate pleasure. And the true long-term pleasure and gratification. I was again speaking to the one who put this together, Levi Shmotkin, about this chapter, and he told me something fascinating. He said he was giving a sermon about this. He was doing a lecture about this book. So a woman in the crowd who was in her 60s, she raises her hand after he finishes speaking, and she is a writer and a person in the press that's writes in very famous newspapers in the United States. And she says, my mother used to always tell me as a kid, the only thing I care about is that you should be happy. That's the only thing I care about. And that's what she always said. And she says, now after reading the book, I think I would have wanted her to say something else. So she says, why? Because, very often when she would be down, she would be depressed, when she would have a hard day, she would think to herself, my mother loves me so much. The person that loves me the most is my mother. And the message that I have in my mind from my mother is, all I want is that you should be happy. And even that I cannot do. I can't be happy. I'm not happy. She says, now reading this book, reading the Rebbe's approach, if my mother would have said, all I want is you should live a purposeful, meaningful life, then in my hard times and my down times, that would have inspired me to get up and fulfill my purpose, and that would have brought me happiness. So in other words, it's like many things in the book, what you would think is the right thing actually turns out to be, everything gets turned over on its head. So in other words, so many times we say, be happy, be happy. All we want is to be happy and, have pleasure. But very often when that's what we're seeking, when that's the goal, be happy, look for pleasure, it ends up coming to reverse, that we get the opposite of happiness and pleasure. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we live for a purpose and for a goal, and we're ready to sacrifice happiness and pleasure for that purpose, for that goal, that actually brings ultimately the ultimate real happiness and pleasure.
I love this conversation because we've had it on other podcasts before, the difference between happiness, which is a temporary, fleeting feeling, and the idea of joy or contentment or purpose, and how, a lot of people's challenges, and especially today in our world, but also always, there's nothing new under the sun, right. It is the idea of chasing happiness, and how when that's your focus, how hollow it ends up becoming. And that's not something that I had as a bullet, but I do think that, right off the top, and that anecdote you just shared, very, very powerful. That's a big flip of the switch, and that's a change in mindset that will change the rest of your life if you're able to dwell on that and achieve that, because it's unrealistic for me to be happy every day. Bad stuff does happen. I'm going to have to learn how to work through and live in those times as well. And I did not tie that back to, I think a lot of parents say that, and I'm not one, so I'm not speaking from a place of lived experience, but I think a lot of parents just want their kids to be happy, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, yeah. but it is unrealistic in a sense, that their kids are going to be happy all the time. Their kids are going to have bad stuff that happens to them just like everyone else, and so that idea of purpose rather than happiness is, really, really powerful. Something to consider, I think, for sure.
Or I guess also you can't, I would say, is that there's no way for someone I guess it's a goal that's unattainable, and it's not in the reach of a person to be happy. What's in the reach of a person is to do things that could bring you happiness. In other words, by living a purposeful life, even in the hard times, even in the down times, even in the tough times, the big challenges, if we have a purpose, if we know we live for something, there's a why, there's for what. So that gives us happiness. Yes, it might not be that we're happy that we get to go dance for a few hours. That we might not be in that place of happiness, but like even when someone's mourning, even when someone is going through like the worst of the worst times, if they, we can't be in anyone's shoes, but I can imagine if someone has, deep down ingrained within them a purpose and for what to live for, even in the worst times, that there's something to be happy about. There's something to. So when a parent says, like as she coined, if my mother would have said, I wish you lived with purpose, that would have helped her always be happy, because she would strive to. That would get her out of bed. That would get her out of her hard times, and would, in result bring happiness.
Mm-hmm. Find the purpose.
Yeah.
I think we talked last week about resilience. That really is the essence of resilience, right? Is having a purpose or having the ability to bounce back and recover and find a path forward regardless of the circumstances. And we talked about the Holocaust and man's search for meaning and some of the things that have come out of the Holocaust. And it talks about that in this chapter.
Yes.
With that question, why would God allow the Holocaust to happen? And that is such a loaded question, right? The fact that he would even take that on as a question to me is this man is fearless, right? Because that is such a gosh, how do you even respond to
Right.
that? But and the letter is long, but I'll see if I can paraphrase it a little bit. He talks about any thinking person who contemplates the solar system, for example, or the complexities of the atom, must come to the conclusion and conviction that our universe did not come about by some freak accident. Wherever you turn, you see design and purpose. And so then when you apply that to things like the Holocaust, what would be the purpose? And goes on to say, the Creator created the world with a purpose, and it's logical to assume that he wished the purpose to be realized and therefore would reveal to the only creature on earth who has the intelligence to understand such matters, namely humankind, what this purpose is and how to go about realizing it. And indeed, this is the ultimate purpose for every human being, to do his or her share in the realization of the divine design and purpose of creation. And without such divine revelation, a human being would not, in his own accord, have known exactly what is that purpose and how to achieve it, any more than a minuscule part or component of a highly complex system could comprehend the whole system. And so, kind of going on, it's understandable that since every person has a God-given purpose in life, he or she is provided with the capacity to carry out that purpose. That's really a belief that when we talk about resilience, that's a huge resilience tool. And then a further important point to remember is that since God created everything with purpose, there's nothing lacking or superfluous in the world. This includes the human capacity. So basically saying that we have the capacity to do anything that he puts in front of us. Anything that comes into our beam, we have the capacity to do, which, I don't know, as a person, that's so intimidating, right?
Yeah, I think the last chapter, so again, each chapter building off of each other, it's, again, I'll bring it back to like Exit 12 and that relationship with a higher power. That last chapter, that idea of knowing that we're not alone and having that relationship with a higher power becomes very important for when you're finding your purpose. And this letter, I had to, actually, the first time that I was reading through this, I read through this twice, because this is a question that, this is like, very top end. I'm either a theology or a philosophy student, and we're going to dive into a 2-week, 400 level.
Right.
This is like top of Maslow's. Yeah. Usually when we're recording a podcast, we're like, okay, bottom tier, second tier. This is the top piece, shining crystal on the top of the pyramid. Right. I think a couple things, one piece being that, is, do I always have to know the why to accomplish my purpose? Do I, as someone on this earth that has broken people and hurt people, right? That's a recovery saying that we use a lot, right? Do I always have to understand the why of the hurt or the why of the situation in order to have a purpose today? Right. And kind of playing off of that, that's, there's these big life events that we think of, someone is born, someone dies, someone's married, someone's divorced, someone gets a new job, someone's fired. Do I always have to understand the why to move forward? And then there's also every other moment in life. There's the mundane. I think about, what did I do this weekend? What was my purpose this weekend when I was laying at the house watching baseball because I just had a day off? But, my wife and I both had a day off. That's a way to reframe too. It doesn't always have to be these big things, but how can we reframe or reframe the small things as well? If I this Friday had said, okay, I don't have anything on my schedule, but my wife and I are going to spend the day at the house together. What is my purpose for today? Maybe I would have been a little more intentional in just our relaxation time. Maybe I would have been more intentional with what activities I'm going to do, whether that's chores around the house or just reading something that I had been meaning to read or what have you. I mean, I don't need to get into specifics about what I should or should not be doing this upcoming weekend, but there's the large reframing and there's the small reframing. And I think it's worth dwelling on your purpose both in those large moments and those small moments. In this chapter, a note I did have was talking about the idea that we can always impact our surroundings, right? Not just when you're in charge of this meeting, but when you're an attendee or just in your daily, everyday, every week job duties or life duties. There is always something you can be doing to impact your surroundings. And also by just sitting back and being passive, you are having an impact on your surroundings, either through action or inaction. So it's really another book I really like that we've talked about on the podcast, Extreme Ownership. How would your life change if you took accountability for everything in your life? If you always ask the question, what could I have done better in this situation? Or what did I do to create success? How am I going to duplicate that? These types of ideas of accountability, purpose, extreme ownership, they really can change your entire outlook on life for the better. And it's something that I have been dwelling on, I think, in the last year on trying to be more intentional.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think we were talking about is how the Rebbe points out about how each person, their unique situation, whether you're a rebellious youth or whether you're a young businessman or someone that retired or stay-at-home parent, and every type of profession you have, you could see it as just, it's my job. It's how I get my paycheck. That's how I get paid. Or you could see it as your purpose, that there's a purpose there that you're meant to accomplish. You're not just a rebellious teenager, but actually there's something unique about that strength and that conviction that a teenager has, that you could really make positive change in the world, things that adults are afraid to do or are too lazy to do. But you, with your youth and with your energy and with that fresh perspective, you could change things in a dramatic way first of all, for yourself, for your close surroundings, but even further. And the same thing, there's someone could say, I just stay at home with the kids, but then you stay at home with the kids, or you're making an impression on children that will last forever, for a lifetime, and on their children, and you don't know what's going to be the result of children with these children, what they're going to become, how many people will they influence, and it's all dependent about the parent that sits at home with their kids. So you're not just sitting at home babysitting kids, but you're actually raising children, raising souls. And the same, how many people that when they retired, which was actually this topic of retirement, was one of the things that the Rebbe strongly advocated against. That people, that our country, we kind of treat people that are older sometimes as, they're old, they're retired, as if they're not as worth as everybody else. And the Rebbe strongly, argued with that just because maybe someone might be a little physically weaker and therefore they can't work as much or they need more time to rest, but as long as God is giving us life, we have a mission to accomplish in this world every second till the last breath. And the elderly, actually, the seniors, people that are senior citizens, could actually accomplish and contribute a lot to society by their lived experiences, by their knowledge, by their wisdom. They could study so much. They could study on their own. They could self-perfection. There's so much that the seniors could do, and it's not just they could do. They're needed. The reason why they're alive is because they're needed, because they're important. They're important for themselves. They're important for their surroundings. They're important for society and for the youth. Why make our own mistakes if we can learn from their mistakes, right?
Yes.
They're here to tell us what they have done, what they have tried, what didn't work, why it didn't work, and to learn from them. So they should be put on the pedestal. Everyone should be looking at them as the elders to learn from them. And so too in every type of profession. Some say, I work on the radio. I'm an artist. And what am I trying to do? I'm trying to make such powerful art that will, sell well and make a lot of money, or no, you have a special God-given mission in art that you have to accomplish, and you could accomplish, and you should accomplish, and you'll make a big difference through art, through the radio, through being a doctor, et cetera, et cetera. So it really, it reframes about how we look at every little thing we do in life, the little things, the big things. And as you said, a day off, a weekend off, is just going to be a weekend sitting on the couch and watching TV, or this is something that's going to be a meaningful day, whatever that day, whatever that's meant to be.
And sometimes that can be sitting and watching TV.
That's right. It could be.
But am I doing it with purpose, or am I doing it
Correct.
passively? And I think that makes all the difference. I'm reminded actually of one portion of the letter he's talking about. Well, let me just read it. The fact that there is no answer to this question, asking why is this allowed to happen, is in itself proof that one is not required to know the answer or understand it in order to fulfill one's purpose in life. Despite the lack of a satisfactory answer to the awesome and tremendous why, one can and must carry on a meaningful and productive life, promoting justice and kindness in one's surrounding, and indeed help create a world where there should be no room for any Holocaust or for any of man's inhumanity to men. And when I was in Japan, we visited the Peace Park. Something I'm thinking of right now is how when we're walking through, there was someone probably in his 80s that had a poster board and was doing a presentation. He was a survivor of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. And this horrifying life experience that he went through, he had found a purpose in that. He had a group of younger folks and older folks that were visitors to the park that were sitting around listening to him talk about this event. And even in that, very similar, I think, to what the rabbi is talking about here, was able to find purpose and a reason for having had that lived experience, right? And the why, I think, became less important in that.
Right.
And I think he speaks to that when he says later on in that letter, what should my response be? Not what happened so much as what should my response be, and developing a response that helps you to go forward. He wraps that up by saying much more could be said on the subject, but why dwell on such a painful matter, referencing the Holocaust when there is so much good to be done, and continues to focus us on the good that can be done and measuring our response to be impactful to the community. And I just think that is such over and over again, his recommendations focus us back on the greater good and away from ourselves to be healthy.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
in other words, and I think, like the idea is regarding the big question why, is that he gave an example from an infant that can't understand a sophisticated scientist, even though one day the infant may be a scientist and a bigger scientist than that scientist, right?
Yeah.
That's very possible. But yet right now it's impossible for the infant to understand the scientist, how much more so all human beings altogether, all creation, because we're finite. We can never understand, God's ways and why he does what he does. So in other words, there is no real answer. There's no answer why the Holocaust happened, yet we do know that we have a purpose. We do know that God didn't create us in vain. As he said, as you mentioned before, that someone just looks at the solar system, or someone that looks at an atom and understands that everything is by design. So we have a purpose. We know what our purpose is, which was revealed in the Torah. And so in other words, no matter, even though the Holocaust happened and there's no answer to it and it's a devastation, yet we know we have still, even despite all of that, we have a purpose, we have a mission, and we have to do it with joy. And on the contrary, if there's anything we should be doing, we should do whatever we could to prevent the possibility of another Holocaust from happening again, which is by making sure people will live with kindness and with justice, and with morals and values.
Mm-hmm. That really reflects on the Holocaust survivor doing a presentation, and
correct,
same kind of philosophy of making something good out of something really horrible, but coming back on the full circle to say, the potential joy in that effort
Yeah.
is real and valuable and part of your purpose, right? The joy becomes part of the purpose or the outcome of the purpose, not the focus.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And I love this conversation because it's very, like high level, makes me sound smart type of conversation, right? But one thing that I also wrote down, and kind of as a guard for me getting a little bit hot, well, I won't use the phrase on this podcast, but sometimes, you can get a little pretentious when you start to not spend too long in these ideas, but you don't want to be holier than thou. And I think something that's highlighted in here is what does this mean in my life, and the idea of small steps. This isn't like a cold turkey type of thing. This is just something that you can start to be mindful of and begin to practice, and you don't have to do anything differently in your life, I think, other than look out for opportunities and just occasionally reflect on, what is my purpose in this? I guess to use another personal example, outside of my work here for part-time work, I ref. I get to work with the Wolverines in Anchorage, doing the broadcast, and those are not, I think that it's tempting and easy to look at my job with my house, the Home with Youth Drop-In Center, and okay, well, at least I have purpose here because I'm helping folks that are less fortunate than me, then that's my purpose. And those other things, well, those aren't as important because, I'm not doing something for the social good. I'm just doing this for me because I like to do it, right? But if you reframe that and instead say, here's something that I have the opportunity to do that I enjoy, that I'm good at, what is the purpose here? What is the opportunity to provide purpose and meaning here? And then all of a sudden, it's not, this hierarchy where there's things that are really important and then just stuff down here. There's purpose in all of that because of my unique gifts and skills that I've been blessed with, right? And
beautiful, yeah.
It makes those moments where you're doing something, less important, sitting at home watching the baseball game, it can make those moments a lot more meaningful. That's what I was really left with after reading this chapter. Yes,
and I think that's one of the things that the Rebbe writes to somebody about how having a purpose doesn't mean necessarily making a revolution and changing the world. Right. Doesn't necessarily mean self-sacrifice, but it means in the little things, as you say, the little things that we do in our day-to-day life, to realize they're not just little. They're not just, happen to be what I do to have fun, what I do for pastime, what I do to keep myself busy or to give me a salary. But it's actually, there's a God-given purpose. And specific, if I'm doing whatever I'm doing, that means there's a special purpose that I could do that's beyond just, getting through the day or paying my bills. There's something unique here in this job or in this thing. I mean, one of the examples was that guy that worked in the radio, that was in charge of the music on the radio station. What could be a purpose about that? And the Rebbe says the radio has such a power that's able to get through doors that someone has, their doors are locked at night, but yet they're listening to the radio in their home. I guess today you could say the same thing about the smartphone or the internet. So you're in one place. This guy's, far away from you, but yet here's exactly what's coming through, what you're putting through the radio. And you have a responsibility. You can either put through the radio terrible messages, inappropriate messages, or you could put uplifting messages, clean messages. Mm-hmm. And that's an amazing purpose right there. You can change thousands of people's lives that are listening to whatever you're broadcasting. That changes the whole perspective. All of a sudden now this guy now could work in the radio station. Actually, this person who was talking about, I know his son, he worked in the radio till his last day of his life. Wow. He saw it as a God-given mission. Mm-hmm. So he's working in the radio for years and years. He never gave up. He felt this was his calling. He's meant to be in the radio. This was like a holy work that he did.
You know what I thought of when I read that was, as somebody who's worked in the psych business for years, there's always schizophrenic people or people that have a little mental challenge that think that the radio is talking directly to them. And I don't say that facetiously. I think that sometimes you're thinking about something or problem solving something and a song comes on the radio. And I have a memory of one time I was on a run and I was really struggling with something that was heavy, and I was praying as I was running and saying, God, just give me something that would just help me through this. Just, send me a verse or something that would really just move me forward. I'm kind of stuck here. And I was running across this bridge, and this car was coming up behind me with this really loud music coming out of it. And as it went by me, it was the Beatles song, Let It Be. Mm. And I started singing that song like a mantra to myself, and it was such a message. Wow. It was exactly what you just talked about. Right. Like that may not have been an intentional programming effort,
right?
But that's broadcast out, so that even if I wasn't listening to a radio, it came to me.
That's right.
And I just think that's such a great example of you don't know what your impact is going to be. In that moment, it doesn't have to be intentional necessarily. You're just walking in the path that was laid before you, and going forward with the faith that you are where you are supposed to be, doing the work you're supposed to be doing. And September, I've been working on this project that's a suicide prevention project. And that's always a little heavy for me. Over the years, we've had lots of young people that, kind of remove themselves from life with us. And it's very hard. And there's a piece of that in here. There's a piece of that in the chapter. And he talks about a suicidal patient who wasn't Jewish, but he managed to get to the hospital in time, saving his life. And afterward, the man came to him and said, "You are responsible for my being alive. Now give me something to live for." And he didn't know how to answer that, and asked the Rebbe what he should say to a patient like this. And the Rebbe said, "Tell him that he's part of God's world. And that means he has to answer to God." And that encourages him to have that conversation with God. Maybe it's when he's running down the road, just kind of praying for a sign or a verse. Maybe it's when he's home watching the baseball game.
Right.
Maybe when it's when he's speaking to someone from a congregation. But it all works on the path for their own unique set of circumstances and gifts.
Yeah.
It's really a remarkable chapter about individuality and purpose.
And I think it's so important for emotional and mental health when you know that, like we said before, that going through the chapters, helping others, giving to others, you're not alone, and then that you have a unique purpose. It's not just that God is with me like he's with everybody else, but he actually has a unique a purpose for me. My gifts, my talents, my situation, my job, my surroundings, everything that I have right now, there's a unique purpose that God needs uniquely me, just me. No one else could replace me. No one else could do it. If I'm gone, God forbid, no one else will be able to replace me. I'll never be able. I'm irreplaceable. I can never be changed, exchanged by anybody else. There's a unique purpose that I have to accomplish. It might take, as we read over here, it might take time or effort to figure out what the purpose is, but there's something unique here for me. So no one could ever, go to sleep and saying, "What am I needed for? What's my purpose in the world?" Oh, if you're alive, you are needed big time.
Yes.
You may not know what you're needed for, but you better, find out, because there's something very special that the world needs of you. And it's not just by accident. It's not just we're trying to make you feel good, but this is the truth. This is the reality. The Creator brought you here on the earth for a unique mission that only you could accomplish.
And you don't have to do a master's level thesis to figure out what that is.
That's right.
You just have to be open to discovering what that is.
That's
you just have to be, like, I think in your story, Michelle, just asking the question, like, I'm ready and open for there to be an answer for this, or there to be a purpose for this. I'm going to be mindful and look for that opportunity. You just have to be open for there being a purpose in that situation, and open to being shown what that is. It's not this 30,000 foot 20-page essay on I've done all of the research and the calculations, and I have distilled it down to this being my one purpose for being here.
That's right.
And that is, I think, in a sense, empowering, because, I would say with my background and my beliefs, there's the concept of the Holy Spirit being led to having that purpose, right? And something that always gave me peace in that moment, and just tying it again back to that letter, is I don't have to know the why. I don't have to worry about what am I going to say, what am I going to do in any circumstance. I just have to be open for there to be a purpose and a reason for me to be in this situation, and that I will be able to be, because I'm supposed to be there, I will be able to accomplish what I'm meant to do in that situation. And then it's really easy, because it's nothing that I have to do. If I'm there, then clearly I am going to be capable, as long as I am willing to do the work and be in that situation. And that's you hear about this in recovery too, I think, right? The letting go, and we've talked about this the last couple episodes, but that is really what is freeing. There's a lot of freedom and empowerment in just,
there will be an answer, let it be.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jess Letterman is one of the founders of this organization. He's written a number of books. He's a fan of C.S. Lewis, and he's a writer, author, a great man. And he used to come in and teach the youth and encourage them. And one of the things that he said early on was, he was a millionaire. He's a millionaire. And he would say the number one strategy for becoming a millionaire, and everybody would be on the edge of their seats, and he would say, show up. That was the number one thing. You just show up.
Show up.
You show up for work. You show up where you're supposed to show up. You show up where you say you're going to show up. You show up. And I've thought about that so many times in the last 15 years, just the idea that when you show up where you're supposed to be, your purpose is there.
Yes.
That's your purpose.
Someone said something that you could fake everything, but the only thing you can't fake is showing up.
That is true.
You can fake being kind, you can fake being generous, you can fake anything, but to show up, either you're there or you're not, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that, that speaks to creating habits, right? You're creating those habits that are success habits that pull you into the next stage of your life, trusting, there will be an answer. Let it be. Just leave it alone. Keep going. Keep on your run, right? Keep on your run. And I really like the study of this book. It creates habits of thinking that I think are really healthy, and I really like that what you just said about showing up. You can fake anything, but you can't fake showing up. I'm encouraged by just in the first few chapters of this book being able to share the thoughts and ideas. Are you thinking anything else, Rabbi?
No, I'm thinking the same thing. This is I'm enjoying going through these letters slowly and chapter by chapter and discussing them. It's really it's having a big impact on me as well. So I really appreciate it. It's amazing that we're able to do this together.
It's really fun, isn't it?
Yes. I love it.
And once again, Michelle, you've segued us perfectly into the next chapter. The first three chapters, they're grouped under essentials for a healthy life, and now we were under essential outlooks, and now that we have that outlook and we've dwelled on that top of the pyramid stuff, now we're going to go back into the trenches next episode, right? Because now it's we know what we are supposed to do. We know some of how we can make those changes, and now it's about a book that you had us read from where I said a book that you had us read, actually, Michelle, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Such a great book.
And this, it's all about the power of these small incremental changes that you can make. And I think in the next episode, when we are talking about the idea of building these healthy habits, we see the incremental ways that we can start to implement these ideas into our daily life.
Nice.
So
very nice.
Perfect.
Talk about it next episode.
We'll talk about it next episode. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Rabbi Mendy, for joining us, and Isaac for being here with us. The Liberating Effect is recorded at the My House Studio in Wasilla, Alaska. Our producer and editor is Ozzy Keener, and I'm Michelle Overstreet. Until next time.